As I understand it, the vice president of Azerbaijan is also the president's wife, and hopefully that doesn't give the second lady any ideas.
Today in our program, we're talking about the US Vice President J.D. Vance's visit to Azerbaijan. What was achieved, what wasn't, and yes, there were also elements of a real embarrassment. By the way, Ilham Aliyev repeatedly called him Vance today, the Russian-style pronunciation. Maybe he should watch less Russian TV and a little more American TV. Honestly, when you are hosting someone, the least you can do is learn how to say his name.
Vice President Vance, Trump Vance, Vice President Vance.
Even now, journalists are still trying to get clear information. In Armenia, there was an actual press conference, not just statements, and that matters. We'll compare what happened in Yerevan with what happened in Baku. Now, the big headline. Today, a strategic cooperation charter was signed between Azerbaijan and the United States. And that's important. I've been saying for some time, yes, work was underway, and I hope that during Vance's visit, a document like this would be finalized. Cooperation is important in trade, in economy, in security, but the key words for us, especially given our difficult neighborhood, are Azerbaijan's territorial integrity, sovereignty, and yes, democratic reforms. So let's see what was promised today. A viewer wrote, if we're closer friends to the US, they should give us more billions. But no billions were announced today, not openly, not in the public part. In Armenia, the vice president actually spoke about the big money, made some more nuclear-related projects, major investments, AI and digital development, and so on. His Armenia remarks were larger and more detailed. In Armenia, he laid out several concrete areas: nuclear energy cooperation, business and investment, jobs, big programs, a whole package. In Azerbaijan, he also talked about peace, and I would say the Baku part of the visit was very peace-focused. From what I understand, the charter covers economy, trade, energy, regional connectivity, AI and digital development, security and defense. There's no talk of freedom, democracy or human rights. At least that's what I'm seeing. In Armenia's strategic cooperation document, democratic reforms were explicitly included. You remember yesterday Pashinyan himself mentioned that they discussed democratic reforms and strengthening state institutions. Also, look at the shift in US regional policy. For the first time, the US will provide Armenia defense equipment, intelligence drones, around $11 million. Azerbaijan will receive boats and vessels, likely also for intelligence and strengthening defense capacity. Now, what happened today in the press part? Can we even call it a press conference? A press conference means questions and answers. Today, there were none. Only statements. In Armenia, Pashinyan and J.D. Vance stood there for about half an hour, roughly 27-28 minutes, statements, commitments, and then real Q&A. Iran came up multiple times. Even as they were leaving, someone was still shouting an Iran question. Most of those same journalists came to Azerbaijan today. So tell me, how is it that in Armenia they could ask questions and get answers, but in Azerbaijan nothing like that happened? Let's be honest, this wasn't because the Americans didn't want it. If the US didn't want questions, there wouldn't have been a press conference in Armenia either. The side that didn't want it was the Azerbaijani side. Aliyev didn't want journalists asking questions. When someone that caliber travels, the plane is full of journalists. Even if it is 5, 10, 15 people, they represent far more outlets because pool reporters produce content for many organizations. And it's not some free tourist trip. In the US, media pay their way. Outlets spend real money to send people, and those journalists have the right to ask questions. In fact, journalists already ask questions. I see parts of it were cut out on the Azerbaijani side. One question was about political prisoners, about critics being jailed. And what happened? Aliyev turned away, walked off, and didn't answer, as if he didn't hear. This is exactly why the Azerbaijani side didn't want Q&A, because Aliyev knows the questions will not be pleasant. Political prisoners, jailed journalists, intimidation of critics, pressure of bloggers abroad, corruption, sanctions, all of it. And this is what makes it humiliating. Imagine it, a senior US official brings an entire plane of journalists. They sit in front of you with notebooks open, and you tell them you will not speak, you will not ask. Why would you do that? Then you complain that you're treated unfairly, that there is an information blockade, and the world is biased against you. But when the world's press comes to your doorstep, you silence them yourself. And friends, this isn't something you can hide. Those journalists will write what happened. In fact, they already have. Now let me touch on another moment because it's not accidental. JD Vance ended his statement by mentioning Mehriban Aliyeva, saying Azerbaijan's vice president is the president's wife. He even joked, basically, I hope this won't give my wife ideas. This is not just a random joke. This is on the record. This goes into American media. People in the US, in the world see this, and it becomes a sitcom level situation. In America, even in political dramas, this kind of thing is treated as fiction. Yet here, it's real. The second highest post in the country is held by the president's spouse. And if that is truly a vice presidential role, then why wasn't there a vice president to vice president meeting? In other words, why J.D. Vance did not meet with his counterpart, Mehriban Aliyeva, if she indeed is vice president of the country. In Armenia, Vice President Vance met the prime minister and also met the president. In Azerbaijan, he met only Ilham Aliyev. So what does it tell you in practice? Vice president role is what J.D. Vance is doing today. He's having tough negotiations, he's striking deals, he represents the president. Does Mehriban Aliyeva do any of this? And then they jail people for pointing out how absurd and frankly hilarious this is. And look at the irony, even without a press conference, even without a Q&A, that topic still reached the microphones because J.D. Vance himself said it. So this is the reality. No matter how much you try to silence journalists, imprison critics, intimidate people abroad, it becomes harder and harder to hide what's happening in the country. That's it from me for now. Stay well. Until next time.